embarking on a journey into the life of a man whose name is synonymous with Kenyan independence, Jomo Kenyatta.
Indeed, Lita. Kenyatta is a truly pivotal figure, but his story is far more nuanced and complex than many realize. He was a leader who navigated the treacherous waters of colonialism, resistance, and nation-building.
Absolutely. So let's start at the beginning, Akirt. Who was Jomo Kenyatta before he became this towering political figure? What was his life like?
Well, born Kamauwa around 1897 in Ichaweri, Gatundu, in what was then British East Africa, Kenyatta's early life was deeply rooted in the traditions of the Kikuyu community. His father, Muigai, died when he was young, and his mother, Wambui, passed away shortly after. He was essentially an orphan, raised by his grandfather, a medicine man. This early life provided him with a profound understanding of Kikuyu culture and customs, which would later prove invaluable in his political career. He attended the Church of Scotland mission at Thogoto, where he received some basic education, learned carpentry, and was baptized as Johnstone Kamau.
So, from a traditional Kikuyu upbringing to a mission education, how did this young man, Johnstone Kamau, transition from that into the political arena?
His entry into politics wasn't a sudden leap, but rather a gradual immersion, born out of the injustices of colonial rule. He moved to Nairobi in 1922 and worked as a storekeeper and water meter reader for the Nairobi Municipal Council. It was during this time that he became increasingly aware of the grievances of the African population: land alienation, forced labor, and racial discrimination. He started engaging with political activists, and in 1924 he joined the Kikuyu Central Association, or KCA. This was a pivotal moment. The KCA was advocating for Kikuyu land rights and greater African representation. Kenyatta's skills as a communicator and his understanding of both traditional and modern worlds quickly propelled him within the organization. He became the KCA's secretary in 1928, and it was around this time that he adopted the name Jomo Kenyatta, which translates to burning spear.
Burning spear, a very evocative name. Now let's talk about his relationship with the British at this early stage. He was actively campaigning against their policies. How did the colonial administration view him, and what was his broader relationship with the British government like?
Initially, the British colonial government viewed him and the KCA with suspicion, seeing them as troublemakers challenging their authority. Kenyatta's relationship with the British was, to put it mildly, adversarial. He traveled to London in 1929 to present Kikuyu land grievances to the Colonial Office, marking his first direct engagement with the British government at a higher level. He spent significant periods in Europe in the 1930s and 40s, studying at the London School of Economics, deepening his anti-colonial ideology, and building international connections. He even published Facing Mount Kenya in 1938, a powerful ethnographic study and a defense of Kikuyu culture, which was a clear intellectual challenge to colonial narratives. So his relationship with the British was one of constant struggle and intellectual sparring, even before the armed resistance.
We're back diving deeper into the life of Jomo Kenyatta. Akirt, we've covered his early life and his entry into politics, facing off against the British. Now, how did he actually ascend to power, first as prime minister and then as president of an independent Kenya? What was the political atmosphere like when he took the reins?
Kenyatta's path to power was arduous. He returned to Kenya in 1946 after nearly 15 years abroad, just as the Mau Mau uprising was gaining momentum. Though he consistently denied any direct involvement in the Mau Mau, the British colonial authorities viewed him as a key orchestrator and a dangerous figure. In 1952, he was arrested and tried for managing the Mau Mau. Despite a highly controversial trial and a lack of credible evidence, he was convicted and imprisoned with 5 other nationalist leaders in Pankupiria.
So he was imprisoned for 7 years and then restricted for another 3. How did a man imprisoned by the colonial powers become the leader of an independent Kenya?
His imprisonment, ironically, solidified his status as a martyr and a symbol of resistance for many Kenyans. The slogan "Uhuru and Kenyatta," Freedom and Kenyatta became the rallying cry of the independence movement. As pressure for decolonization mounted, the British realized that there could be no stable transition to independence without Kenyatta's involvement. He was released in 1961. Upon his release, he immediately took charge of the Kenyan African National Union, or KANU, the leading political party advocating for independence. KANU won the pre-independence elections in 1963, and Kenyatta became Kenya's first prime minister in December 1963. Exactly 1 year later, when Kenya became a republic, he transitioned to become its first president.
That's a rapid ascent. What was the political temperature like at the time of his presidency? Was it a unified nation celebrating independence, or were there underlying tensions?
It was a complex mix, Lita. There was immense euphoria and optimism for independence, a sense of destiny fulfilled. However, beneath the surface, there were significant challenges. The wounds of the Mau Mau uprising were still fresh, and tribal loyalties remained strong. There were also deep economic disparities inherited from the colonial era. Kenyatta's presidency aimed to foster national unity, famously advocating for the concept of harembe, a Swahili term meaning pulling together. Yet, managing diverse ethnic interests and expectations and consolidating power was a continuous balancing act. The government, while newly independent, still grappled with the legacy of colonial structures and economic dependence. While politically sovereign, economically, Kenya remained largely reliant on Western aid and trade, meaning its sovereignty was somewhat tempered by external economic influences in its early years.
Welcome back to Deep Dive. In this final segment, Accured, we're going to tackle some of the more controversial aspects of Kenyatta's legacy, his relationship with the freedom fighters, the critical issue of land redistribution, and the allegations of personal enrichment that arose from it.
This is where the narrative becomes particularly complex. Kenyatta's relationship with the Mau Mau freedom fighters, many of whom had suffered immensely and truly borne the brunt of the struggle for independence, was at best ambivalent, at worst fraught. While he was imprisoned for allegedly managing the Mau Mau, upon his release and ascent to power, he often distanced himself from them, portraying them as a radical element. Many Mau Mau veterans felt betrayed, believing their sacrifices were not adequately recognized or rewarded.
That's a stark contrast to the image of him as the leader of the independence movement. Now, let's get into the land issue. This was central to the colonial grievance. How was land redistribution handled, and what were the consequences?
Land was the core issue, Lita. The British government, as part of the independence agreement, provided grants and loans to the Kenyan government. The aim was to buy land from willing white British settlers, particularly in the fertile White Highlands, and redistribute it to landless Africans. This was known as the Million Acre Scheme, and other settlement schemes. The intention was good, to correct historical injustices.
And what happened in practice?
In practice, it became a major source of controversy and inequality. Instead of prioritizing the landless and the Mau Mau veterans, much of the prime land ended up in the hands of a new African elite, including Jomo Kenyatta himself and his closest political allies. They used their positions of power and access to capital, often from government-backed loans or even directly from the British funds, to acquire vast tracts of land.
So the very mechanism meant to address historical land injustices ended up creating new ones, with Kenyatta reportedly becoming the largest landowner in the country. Can you elaborate on this, and who else benefited?
Yes, that's precisely what happened. Kenyatta, through various family members and proxy companies, acquired extensive land holdings. This was a significant source of his personal wealth. His political allies, cabinet ministers, and close associates also benefited immensely from these schemes. Individuals like Mbiu Kwenange, Charles Nonjo, and others who were part of his inner circle used their influence to gain access to prime agricultural land and properties. This created a new class of wealthy African landowners, often at the expense of the impoverished majority, including many of the freedom fighters who had shed blood for the land.
It sounds like a complex and deeply problematic legacy. The promise of land for all who fought ultimately resulted in a concentration of wealth and land in the hands of few.
Precisely. This land redistribution policy, while a necessary step in decolonization, inadvertently solidified economic inequalities and laid the groundwork for future social and political tensions. It's a critical part to understanding Kenyatta's reign, a blend of nationalist triumph and the emergence of a powerful, often self-serving elite. It's a crucial aspect to examine when we evaluate the legacy of Kenya's founding father.
Cured, this has been an incredibly insightful and deeply researched discussion. Thank you for shedding light on the multifaceted life and legacy of Jomo Kenyatta.
My pleasure, Lita. It's a story that truly demonstrates the complexities of nation building and the enduring challenges faced by post-colonial states.
That concludes this deep dive into the life of Jomo Kenyatta. This has been Deep Dive, Episode 1. If you enjoyed this journey into history, please remember to subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories. Thank you for listening.